Hi, this is Mike Gant, and this is the weekly video teaching for Saturday, August the 20th. This is weekly teaching number 42, and I'm going to continue reviewing the Matthew Vines video. This will be part 2, and I don't want to spend a lot of time reviewing. You've got the teaching from last week. Just say that I reviewed the first minute and a half, and now we'll pick it up there. Again, I apologize for the quality of the video, but we'll just do the best we can. So let's read here. Nope, that's the wrong thing. Okay, let's start it here.
I want to begin tonight by considering the traditional interpretation of Scripture on this subject, in part because its conclusions have a much longer history from the Church, and also because I think that many who adhere to that position feel that those who are arguing for a new position haven't yet put forth theological arguments that are as well grounded in Scripture as their own, in which case the most biblically sound position should prevail.
Okay, so again, he's just saying here that what he's gonna do tonight is, in this presentation, is consider what he calls the traditional interpretation of Scripture on this subject. And I mean, nothing wrong with that. I'm saying that it is the traditional interpretation of Scripture that marriage is between a man and a woman. He says, I haven't yet put forth the theological, or he says, his side has not yet put forth theological arguments that are as well grounded as Scripture as their own. So let's pick it up there, and we'll listen this time for about 2 minutes. We'll take it from 152 down to 409.
The traditional interpretation in summary form is this. There are 6 passages in the Bible.
Excuse me, I'm going to set the phone down in a minute and try to get the volume up a little bit so hopefully that's not a source of frustration for you. Sorry, let me try that. I'm going to keep going.
That refer in some way to same-sex behavior, and they are all negative. 3 of them are direct and clear. In the Old Testament, in Leviticus, male same-sex relations are prohibited and labeled an abomination. And in the New Testament, in Romans, Paul speaks of women, quote, exchanging natural relations for unnatural ones, and of men abandoning natural relations with women and committing shameful acts with other men. And so according to the traditional interpretation, both the Old and the New Testament are consistent in their rejection of same-sex relationships. But it's not just those 3 verses, as well as 3 others that I'll come to later. It's true that 6 verses isn't all that many out of Scripture's 31,000. But not only are they all negative. From the traditional viewpoint, they gain broader meaning and coherence from the opening chapters of Genesis, in which God creates Adam and Eve, male and female. That was the original creation, before the fall, before sin entered the world. That was the way that things were supposed to be. And so according to this view, if someone is gay, then their sexual orientation is a sign of the fall, a sign of human fallenness and brokenness. That was not the way that things were supposed to be. And while having a same-sex orientation is not in and of itself a sin, according to the traditional interpretation, acting upon it is, because the Bible is clear both in what it negatively prohibits and in what it positively approves. Christians who are gay, those who are only attracted to members of the same sex, are thus called to refrain from acting on those attractions, to deny themselves, to take up their crosses, and to follow Christ. And though it may not seem fair to us, God's ways are higher than our own, and it's not our role to question, but to obey.
Okay, so let's review what Matthew's done here. And this is real significant in this part because he's still a ways from getting to these 6 verses. This presentation lasts an hour and 7 minutes. He spends, it's about 15, 16, 17 minutes in the introduction We're in, just early in the introduction. But as I said last week, he's basically, although he doesn't say he's trying to do it, he says he's just kind of preparing the way for the discussion. But he's really, he's trying to frame the argument and really establish his argument right here in the introduction, and I'll explain in detail what I mean by that. He gives the traditional interpretation in its summary form. In its summary form, there are 6 passages in the Bible that refer in some way to same-sex behavior, and they're all negative. So that's his summary form. Now, I don't agree with that. I think that there's much more to the Bible's case against sex outside of marriage in general and homosexuality in particular than those 6 verses. And he himself is going to admit as much in a minute, but he just makes it sound like, okay, here's the traditional interpretation is there's 6 verses against 3 in the Old Testament, 3 in the New, and he's going to get to them in a bit. And here's where he throws this little thing in here subtly. He said it's true that 6 verses isn't all that many out of Scripture's 31,000. So what does that imply? What is he implying there? Well, he's implying that, okay, you guys on the other side, you've only got 6 verses. Out of 31,000, all you can come up with is 6 verses against homosexuality, as if the Bible is supposed to be predominantly about the issue of homosexuality. But that's just kind of a little, you see a lot of subtle little things in there. It's 6 verses. It isn't all that many out of 31,000. We'll see him make other comments like that too. But he does go on, to his credit, to admit that these 6 verses gain broader meaning and coherence from the opening chapters of Genesis. Well, absolutely, because that Genesis is what Jesus said defined marriage when he was asked about it in Matthew 19. When he was asked specifically about divorce, he immediately started talking about Genesis and the way God made things from the beginning. So Matthew's absolutely right when he talks about Genesis as if it's important to this discussion. And he rightly describes it, that God creates Adam and Eve, male and female. That was the original creation before the fall, before sin entered in the world. That's the way things were supposed to be, he says. And so according to this view, now here's where I part company with him. I give him credit for what he said there. But he says here, according to this view, if someone is gay, he hasn't established his position. The Bible talks about homosexuality being a sin. It does not identify us as straight or gay. And you'll see throughout his presentation, he fully accepts and employs that sort of non-biblical way of looking at people. They're either straight or gay. Of course, those are euphemisms for heterosexual and homosexual, or for normal and abnormal. I'm not going to worry about being politically correct. He says, if someone is gay. So right there, I think this is really, it's a very effective rhetorical device for him, because it immediately begins framing the discussion between straight and gay. And you'll see him make the point later explicitly, but here the implication is, okay, if you're straight, I'm gay, and if you're straight, then you're just basically being unfair to me because you are allowing yourself to do things that you won't allow me to do. But I don't buy into the notion that he is gay. He may be engaging in homosexual behavior. He may think he's homosexual, but to identify himself as that behavior is, I just don't accept that. He's a human being, just like I'm a human being. And he's a male, like I'm a male. That's part of his identity. These behaviors or, physical desires, that's not who you are. That's not your identity. He then uses another term, which has not been he doesn't explain or justify. He talks about sexual orientation. Now, I recognize that the terms gay and sexual orientation, they've become commonly accepted in society today, but it doesn't mean they're valid terms. Sexual orientation, he's saying, his implication is, I'm homosexual and I was made this way since birth. Now, he'll say this sort of thing more explicitly, so I'll withhold further comment on that until he does. He says having a same-sex orientation is not in and of itself a sin. Well, where's he getting that from the Bible? You say, Mike, are you saying it is a sin? No, I'm just saying it's a false category. Where's the biblical? If this is supposed to, if he's saying he's presenting a biblical argument, why are we not restricting ourselves to biblical vocabulary? Sexual orientation, gay, these are not biblical terms. He says, Christians who are gay, those who are only attracted to members of the same sex, are called to refrain acting on those attractions. So he's framed the issue in a way that I think is just, there's no foundation for it. It's not biblical. Let's go on. We're going to, this time we'll watch from 4:09 to 5:56. This will be another, like, roughly 2-minute segment. 5:56, yeah.
Within this framework, gay people have a problem, and that is that they want to have sex with the wrong people. They tend to be viewed as essentially lustful, sexual beings. So while straight people fall in love, get married, and start families, gay people just have sex. But everyone has a sexual orientation, and it isn't just about sex. Straight people are never really forced to think about their sexual orientation as a distinctive characteristic, but it's still a part of them, and it affects an enormous amount of their lives. What sexual orientation is for straight people is their capacity for romantic love and self-giving. It's not just about sexual attraction and behavior. It's because we have a sexual orientation that we're able to fall in love with someone, to build a long-term, committed relationship with them, and to form a family. Family is not about sex. But for so many of us, it still depends upon having a companion, a spouse. And that's true for gay people as well as for straight people. That is what sexual orientation means for them too. Gay people have the very same capacity for romantic love and self-giving that straight people do. The emotional bond that gay couples share, the quality of love, is identical to that of straight couples. Gay people, like almost all of us, come from families, and they too long to build one of their own. But the consequence of the traditional interpretation of the Bible...
Okay, I think I may have gone a little bit too far there, or didn't get my number exactly right. But here, Matthew really starts, he's using a theology which is not a biblical theology. He's using basically modern secular thinking. He says gay people have a problem, and that is when they want to have sex with the wrong people. That's their problem. They want to have sex with the wrong people. They tend to be viewed as essentially lustful sexual beings, while straight people fall in love, get married, start families. Gay people just have sex. But everyone has a sexual orientation. I don't know that I get that. Everyone's male or female, and there is a God-given attraction that males have to females, and it seems that some people have a different, that is somehow broken in some way, but the same argument that Matthew is making could apply to, and I hate to even talk about things like this, but a pedophile. A pedophile could use the same thing. I've read their testimonies. They'll say things like, well, I just feel this way about small children. I always have. I've been that way. This is a common theme. Or someone who does more perverted things. They'll say, well, I've just always been that way. So the fact that you have certain desires does not mean that they're God-given, does not mean that they're right. But his whole argument seems to be, hey, I've had this sort of desire since I was born. I don't know how he would know that. I've never seen a baby with a sexual orientation. Have you ever seen a baby that was sexually oriented? I never have. Babies, they're blissfully and appropriately unaware of that dimension of human activity. And so most people can't remember very much before they were 5 years old, but somehow he knows that he's been this way since he was born. I don't get it. He's believing what someone else has told him. He can't possibly be saying that out of his own personal experience. Even if he was, what would it prove? It proved that he had these desires. That doesn't mean that's who he is. It doesn't mean it's part of his identity. We have all sorts of thoughts that come into our heads that are not good. That doesn't mean that's who we are. Straight people are never really forced to think about sexual orientation as a distinctive characteristic. It's not a distinctive characteristic. Male and female is. Let's see. Okay, now he's going to go and define sexual orientation as further. He's going to say it is their capacity. It is the capacity for romantic love and self-giving. Okay, so now we've moved beyond a physical desire. It's the capacity for romantic love and self-giving. And that's a huge leap. Sexual orientation is the capacity for romantic love and self-giving. Wow. And then he goes on to redefine family. So he's creating new definitions. Now he's going to change existing definitions. He says, to form a family. Family is not about sex, but for so many of us, it still depends on having a companion, a spouse. Where's he getting this definition? He's saying family, you got to have a spouse. Well, according to him, why? What's the biblical basis for it? The biblical basis for family is husband, wife, man, woman, male, female. You put those two together, you're going to have children. You put male and male together, you're not going to have children. You put female and female together, you're not going to have children. So therefore, you're not going to have family. His argument is not against the traditional interpretation. His argument's against the Creator. His argument is against God. God's the one that made it that way. The emotional bond that gay couples share, the quality of love, is identical to that of straight couples. Well, it's not going to produce children. They too long to build one of their own. But why, if they long to build a family of their own, why do they resist doing it God's way? Why do they say, not only do I not want to do it God's way, I want to do it my way, and my way is my identity. That's who I am. My identity is this desire that I have. I am my desires. That's like a glutton saying, I am my appetite. No, a glutton is not his appetite. A glutton may have a problem with his appetite, but he needs to discipline himself, and he needs to divest himself of his gluttonous appetite. All right, I've only got time for one more segment. This one will be about a minute and a half. We'll go to 7:30. Not 7:30 tonight, but the minute and second marker.
Bible is that while straight people are told to avoid lust, casual relationships, and promiscuity, gay people are told to avoid romantic relationships entirely. Straight people's sexuality is seen as a fundamentally good thing, as a gift. It can be used in sinful or irresponsible ways, but it can also be harnessed and oriented toward a loving marriage relationship that will be blessed and celebrated by their community. But gay people, though they are capable of and desire loving relationships that are just as important to them, are told that for them, even lifelong, committed relationships would be sinful because their sexual orientation is completely broken. It's not an issue of lust versus love, or of casual versus committed relationships, because same-sex relationships are intrinsically sinful, no matter the quality and no matter the context. Gay people's sexual orientation is so broken, so messed up, that nothing good can come from it. No morally good, godly relationship could ever come from it. And so they are told that they will never have a romantic bond that will be celebrated by their community. They are told that they will never have a family.
Okay. So in this segment, Matthew continues this argument, having built it on a foundation. The picture looks funny here, but I don't know why. That's a little better. Matthew continues his argument, having established on a foundation that he did not get us to accept with him. He just presumed it's true. He presumed that he is gay and he can't change that, and that he was made that way. And so that's his life. And so his whole argument is, this is who I am. It's just as certain as my hair color or my eye color or my skin color. It is who I am. It's the way I always have been. It's the way I always will be. And I should be able to have a family. So he never persuaded me that it's all those things, but he kept on arguing as if I had agreed to all that, but I don't. And when I say me, I'm speaking for any listener. And he says that they'll be told that they will never have a family. Well, God's the one that told them they'd never have a family, because it's only when a man and a woman come together that there can be a family. So his argument is not with me. His argument is not with an interpretation of the Bible, traditional or otherwise. His argument is with the Creator, because the Creator made life this way. Now, I'm actually sympathetic to Matthew at this point, because, he's got a lot of people in society today affirming him. It's really odd to me when people talk about how brave someone has to be to say the sort of things Matthew says. To say the sort of things that Matthew says automatically puts you in the majority opinion these days in America. It's a guarantee that you're going to be applauded. It's a guarantee that you're going to be supported. And it's a guarantee that anyone who argues with you, like me in this video, is going to be considered hateful, bigoted, wrong, way wrong. People who watch this video, the majority, if this video that I'm making right now were shown to the majority of Americans, Matthew would be applauded and I would be excoriated, because that's just where public opinion is these days. But that doesn't mean that it's right. So he's lamenting the fact that his romantic bonds, his homosexual romantic bonds, will never be celebrated by the community. Well, not a community that I would be part of. There are certainly a lot of communities where it would be celebrated. In fact, there are bakers and florists and photographers for weddings that can't get jobs, can't stay in business, because they won't celebrate this. That's just where we are these days. But I hope you've seen enough here to see how Matthew's already making his argument, even when he's supposedly just sort of laying the foundation and even-handedly describing both sides of the discussion. It's a very emotionally manipulative presentation. It's, basically presentation is, here I am, this young person. I was made this way. I didn't ask this way. It's very hard on me. I'm very unhappy. And as long as people continue to deny me this, you're going to guarantee my sadness, my unhappiness, my grief in life. And if you disagree with me, then you are responsible for my unhappiness. That's what I mean by emotionally manipulative. It's not a straightforward argument on the merits of his argument, but it is a while he's arguing, he's basically saying, if you don't agree with me, you're responsible for my misery. And I've never felt good about emotionally manipulative arguments. I hope you will read the book that I wrote, The Honor of Marriage. If you already feel like you have a real solid understanding of what marriage is from the Bible and what family is, then you don't need to read it. But I think it makes some points that are just often lost, and it certainly will reinforce for you what you already know. But it was even eye-opening for me as I read it, because it deepened and enriched my appreciation of what marriage is. So we'll pick it up here next week. Thank you for watching, and God bless you as you seek to obey and honor Jesus today.